I want to start with something that might sound strange, especially if you clicked on this video, because the title said $500 and billions in the same sentence. The uncomfortable truth is this: $500 will probably not make you a billionaire by itself. Not next month, not next year, not because of one stock tip, not because of one secret investment hiding somewhere in the shadows of Wall Street. And anyone who tells you otherwise is probably trying to sell you something. But here is the part most people miss. The $500 is not the miracle. The $500 is the test. It is the first small proof of whether you understand the rules that eventually separate ordinary financial lives from extraordinary ones. Because wealth rarely begins with a giant number. It begins with a small amount of money being treated with unusual seriousness. That is what Warren Buffett understood better than almost anyone. He did not become one of the richest investors in history because he found one magic stock and got lucky. He became wealthy because he obeyed a small set of rules for a very long time, with a level of patience that most people find almost impossible to tolerate. And that is where most people lose. Not because they do not earn enough. Not because they are not smart enough. Not because the system is easy, because it is not. But because they keep treating small amounts of money like small amounts of money. They look at $500 and say, what difference could this possibly make? And that question, right there, is the beginning of the problem. Because the rich person does not look at $500 and see $500. They see a seed. They see a worker. They see a tool. They see the first brick in a wall that may take decades to build. The average person sees what $500 can buy today. The wealthy person sees what $500 can become if it is protected, multiplied, and given enough time to grow. So today I want to talk about 7 rules, not tricks, not hacks, rules. The kind of rules that sound almost too simple when you first hear them. But if you actually live by them, if you allow them to shape the way you think about money, they can change the direction of your entire life. And before we get into the first rule, I want you to notice something about yourself. When you hear $500, part of your brain probably dismisses it. It says, that is not enough. That will not change anything. I need a bigger raise, a bigger opportunity, a bigger break. And maybe you do. But the danger is that while you are waiting for the big thing, you train yourself to waste the small thing. And a person who cannot respect $500 will usually not respect $50,000 when it arrives. They will just waste it more elegantly. Rule number 1 is this: never despise small beginnings. This may be the most important rule in the entire conversation. Most people fail financially because they believe the first step has to feel impressive. They want to invest when they have $10,000. They want to get serious when the debt is gone. They want to start when the paycheck is larger, when life is calmer, when they feel more ready. But readiness is one of the most expensive illusions in personal finance. Warren Buffett started young, but the deeper lesson is not simply that he started young. It is that he started before the numbers looked impressive. He understood that the habit was more important than the amount. A small amount invested consistently does something very powerful to your identity. It teaches you that you are not just a spender. You are an owner. You are someone who takes part of today and sends it into the future. That shift may seem invisible at first, but it is enormous. Imagine 2 people, both with $500. The first person spends it because, after all, $500 will not make them rich. They buy a few dinners, upgrade their phone, cover some random expenses, and within 6 weeks, the money has disappeared so quietly they can barely remember where it went. The second person invests it. Nothing dramatic happens. No fireworks. Number. Sudden transformation. The account balance barely moves. But something has changed. They now have a stake. They have planted a seed. And more importantly, they have crossed a psychological line. They have said to themselves, I am the kind of person who builds. That identity, repeated over years, is far more powerful than most people understand. Rule number 2. Every dollar must have a job before emotion gives it one. This is where ordinary people get trapped. Money comes in, life happens, feelings show up, and the dollar is assigned a job in the moment. Boredom gives it a job. Stress gives it a job. Envy gives it a job. Fatigue gives it a job. You had a hard week, so the dollar becomes a reward. You feel behind, so the dollar becomes a symbol that you are doing okay. You see someone else living better, so the dollar becomes proof that you can keep up. This is not because people are stupid. It is because money is emotional long before it is mathematical. The wealthy understand this, which is why they decide in advance. Before the paycheck lands, they know what portion will be invested, what portion will be saved, what portion will be spent, and what portion will be used to pay down obligations. They do not wait until Friday night, tired and frustrated, to decide what their future is worth. And that may sound strict, but it is actually freedom. A dollar without a job will be recruited by whatever feeling is loudest. A dollar with a job is protected. If you have $500, the question is not, what can I buy? The question is, what assignment should this money receive? Should it reduce debt? Should it build an emergency fund? Should it buy ownership in productive assets? Should it pay for a skill that increases your earning power? That question alone separates people who drift from people who build. Rule number 3. Buy assets before you buy status. This one is painful because status is seductive. Status speaks quickly. Assets speak slowly. A new car is visible immediately. A growing investment account is mostly invisible. A designer watch gets noticed at dinner. An index fund quietly reinvesting dividends does not. And because human beings are social creatures, we are often tempted to buy the thing that tells the world we are doing well before we have actually built the foundation. That makes us well. This is how people with good incomes stay fragile. They earn more and immediately raise the cost of appearing successful. The apartment gets nicer. The car payment gets larger. The vacations become more expensive. The clothes improve. The restaurants improve. And from the outside, everything looks like progress. But beneath the surface, the person is not becoming wealthier. They are becoming more expensive to maintain. There is a difference. Buffett's life has always carried a quiet message about this, whether people notice it or not. Wealth is not the same as display. In fact, display often delays wealth. If your first instinct with extra money is to upgrade how you look rather than upgrade what you own, you will spend decades looking more successful than you actually feel. Assets are different. Assets may not impress anyone today, but they give you something status never will. They give you future income, future options, future leverage, future peace. A share of a great business, a broad index fund, a rental property bought intelligently, a skill that raises your income, a cash reserve that prevents panic. These things do not clap for you. They simply strengthen you. And strength is better than applause. Rule number 4. Understand that compounding punishes delay more than mistakes. People worry constantly about making the perfect investment decision. They ask, what if I choose the wrong fund? What if the market drops? What if I start at the wrong time? Those are real concerns, but they are often not the biggest danger. The biggest danger is waiting so long for certainty that compounding never gets enough time to work. Let me put this plainly. A decent decision made early can beat a perfect decision made too late. That is not because details do not matter. They do. Fees matter. Diversification matters. Risk matters. But time matters more than people want to admit, because time is the one ingredient you cannot earn back. If you invest $500 and let it grow for 40 years, you have given that money something extraordinary. Decades. If you wait 10 years because you are nervous, you may feel safer, but you have quietly destroyed some of the most valuable growth years that money could ever have had. Compounding is like an oak tree. In the first years, it looks unimpressive. You plant the acorn and almost nothing happens. Then a small stem appears. Then a fragile sapling. For a long time, someone walking by might laugh and say, "That is your big plan?" But the person who understands trees does not argue with them. They simply wait. Because the point was never what the tree looked like in year 3. The point was what it would become in year 30. Money works the same way. The early years feel boring. The middle years feel slow. And then, suddenly, the curve begins to bend. The growth starts producing growth. The returns start producing returns. The workers you hired with your dollars start hiring workers of their own. This is why delay is so costly. You are not just losing the money you could have invested. You are losing the children and grandchildren of that money. Rule number 5. Never let fear make permanent decisions during temporary storms. This may be the rule that saves more futures than any other. Every investor eventually faces a moment when the market looks terrifying. It may be a recession. It may be a pandemic. It may be inflation, war, unemployment, bank failures, political chaos, or some new crisis nobody saw coming. The headlines will sound serious because sometimes they are serious. Your account may fall. Your confidence may disappear. And every part of your nervous system will tell you to do something. Sell. Pause. Move to cash. Wait until things feel normal again. That instinct feels responsible. It feels adult. It feels like protecting yourself. But markets do not reward the person who waits until everything feels safe, because by the time everything feels safe, the opportunity has usually passed. Think about a man named David. David had been investing steadily for years. Nothing fancy. Just a retirement account. Some index funds, a little extra in a brokerage account. Then a major market crash came. His balance dropped by more money than he had ever lost on paper in his life. He could not sleep. He checked his account 3 times a day. He watched the news until every headline felt like a personal warning. Finally, he sold. He told his wife, "I just want to protect what is left." And for a few weeks, he felt relieved. That is the dangerous part. Bad financial decisions often reward you emotionally at first. Selling made the fear stop. But then, the market recovered. Slowly at first, then powerfully. David waited for certainty. He waited for confirmation. He waited for experts to agree that the danger was gone. By the time he got back in, he had missed the recovery that would have healed the damage. His fear had taken a temporary decline and turned it into a permanent loss. That is what fear does. When you give it authority, it does not just respond to pain. It preserves pain. Wealthy investors are not people who never feel fear. They feel it. They are human. The difference is that they do not give fear the steering wheel. They have rules written before the storm arrives. They know what they own. They know why they own it. They know that volatility is not a malfunction. It is the entrance fee. Rule number 6. Invest in what increases your earning power, not just what grows your account balance. This is the rule people forget when they only think about stocks. Your greatest asset, especially early in life, is not your portfolio. It is your ability to earn. If $500 can help you acquire a skill that increases your income by thousands of dollars a year, that may be one of the best investments you ever make. A course, a certification, a tool, a book, coaching, software, language skills, sales skills. Communication skills, technical skills, these can become assets if they raise the value of your time. But here is the key. Not all self-investment is real investment. Some of it is procrastination wearing a nice outfit. Buying a course and never finishing it is not investing in yourself. Buying books and never applying them is not investing in yourself. Watching finance videos for 3 years while changing nothing is not education. It is entertainment with better branding. Real self-investment produces behavior. It changes what you do. It changes what you can offer. It changes the market value of your labor or your judgment. A woman named Karen worked in an office job for 18 years. Reliable, responsible, underpaid. She kept telling herself that she was lucky to have stability. Then one year, instead of using her tax refund on furniture and a short vacation, she used part of it to learn project management properly. Not casually. Seriously. She studied at night. She practiced. She asked for small responsibilities at work. Within 2 years, she had moved into a higher-paying role. Within 5 years, the increase in her income was worth more than any single stock investment she could have made with the original money. That is something people need to understand. Sometimes the best way to turn $500 into something life-changing is not to ask, "What stock should I buy?" Sometimes it is to ask, "What skill would make me more valuable for the rest of my working life?" Rule number 7. Protect the system, not just the money. This final rule is the one that ties everything together. Most people think the goal is to protect their cash, protect their investments, protect their income. And yes, of course, those things matter. But the deeper goal is to protect the system that keeps producing wealth. A system is more powerful than a single decision. A system says, every month I invest before I spend emotionally. A system says, every raise will increase my future, not just my lifestyle. A system says, I will not sell productive assets because a headline scared me. A system says, I will keep learning, keep earning, keep patience as my advantage. The rich do not become rich because every decision is brilliant. They become rich because their system keeps correcting them. They have habits that make wealth the default outcome over long periods of time. The average person has habits that make financial stress the default outcome, even when their income rises. That is why 2 people can earn the same money for 30 years and end in completely different places. One built a system. The other built a lifestyle. One bought assets quietly. The other bought approval loudly. One let time work. The other kept interrupting it. One gave every dollar a job. The other let every dollar wander until it disappeared. And I want to be very clear here. This is not about shame. Shame does not build wealth. Shame makes people hide from their numbers. This is about honesty. If your money has not been growing, the question is not, what is wrong with me? The question is, what system have I been living inside? Because systems can be changed. Habits can be rebuilt. Rules can be written. And the future does not require your past to approve of it. So what do you do with $500? You treat it like a beginning, not a solution. You give it a job. Maybe you build the first layer of an emergency fund, so life cannot push you into debt so easily. Maybe you pay down a toxic credit card balance that is quietly draining your future. Maybe you buy a broad, low-cost investment and make the first deposit into a lifelong ownership habit. Maybe you use it to learn a skill that raises your income. The exact move depends on your situation. But the mindset does not change. You do not ask that $500 to make you rich overnight. You ask it to make you different. Different in how you think. Different in how you behave. Different in how seriously you take the small amounts that everyone else ignores. Because billions, when you really study them, are not built from magic. They are built from ownership, patience, discipline, learning, emotional control, and time. Those words sound boring because real wealth often sounds boring while it is being built. But boring is not the enemy. Boring is where the money hides. The flashy thing gets attention. The boring thing compounds. The flashy thing gives you a story for the weekend. The boring thing gives you freedom 20 years later. And freedom is the real goal. Not a number on a screen. Not a private jet. Not a mansion that makes strangers jealous. Freedom. The ability to sleep without fearing one unexpected bill. The ability to leave a job that is breaking your spirit. The ability to help your family without destroying your own stability. The ability to make decisions from wisdom instead of desperation. That is what money is for. That is why the rules matter. And that is why $500 matters. Not because it is enough by itself, but because it reveals whether you are ready to become the kind of person who can build. In 30 years, there will be people who look back and say, I wish I had started when the numbers were small. They will remember the money that passed through their hands, the raises, the bonuses, the refunds, the little windfalls, the extra. $500 here and there, and they will realize that none of it was too small. It was only treated too casually. And there will be another group of people who look back with quiet gratitude, not because they did everything perfectly, but because one day they decided to stop laughing at small beginnings. They planted the acorn. They assigned the dollar. They bought the asset before the status. They gave compounding time. They refused to let fear sell their future. They invested in their earning power. They protected the system. And slowly, without applause, without drama, without anyone noticing it first, their life changed. The seed became a tree. The dollar became a worker. The worker hired more workers. The thread became a rope. The rope became a bridge. That is how ordinary people begin building extraordinary financial lives. Not all at once, not overnight. Not because a title promised that $500 would magically become billions, but because they finally understood that every fortune begins with a rule. Every rule begins with a decision, and every decision begins in one quiet moment when you choose to take your future seriously. Start there. Start small. Start before it looks impressive. And then give time the one thing it needs from you, the patience to let it work.